Hello, I'm Llewellyn King, the host of White House Chronicle, which is coming right up. And I'm glad to say that today we have a very special edition that celebrates or marks or takes notice of the fact that the world population has now reached 7 billion. And in order to survive, the species will need food, water, and energy. And they're enormously connected. Those connections and that supply will be examined in this program with some of the best minds working in energy supply and energy availability and the future of the planet that you can assemble in one place. And they have been assembled here for a special conference organized by the World Energy Council and by its American chapter, the United States Energy Association. We will be right back with that program.
Many have spoken out on the need to transition to a clean energy future. At Exelon, we are acting. By 2020, we are committed to reducing, offsetting, or displacing more than 15 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually through greening our operations, helping our customers and communities reduce their emissions, and offering more low-carbon electricity in the marketplace. At Exelon, we are taking action and we are seeing results.
And now, the program host, nationally syndicated columnist Llewellyn King, and co-host Linda Gasparello.
Barry Worthington is the Executive Director of the United States Energy Association. Welcome to the broadcast, Barry.
Thank you for having me.
What is the relationship between the United States Energy Association and the World Energy Council?
Well, you belong to the World Energy Council as a country. So there's 90 countries that are members of the World Energy Council. We're the U.S. affiliate known as the U.S. Member Committee of the World Energy Council. So we have counterparts in all of the other 90-some countries.
What is your mission?
Basically, what we strive to do is to develop a dialogue, a forum for conversation, so that both people in the energy industry and outside of the energy industry can understand how the energy systems in the world work.
Energy is not in an acute crisis at the moment, and yet it's more important than it's ever been as we reach or have reached 7 billion people on Earth.
7 billion people this week, according to the United Nations, and you know that whoever that child is, that was a 7 billionth. There's about a 1/3 chance that they're born in a modern economy with plenty abundant, affordable, reliable energy. There's a
Which means also food and water available.
It does. It absolutely. You can't have either food or water without energy. But there's also a 1/3 of a chance that they were born in a location where there's inadequate, unreliable, and unaffordable energy, both electric power and liquid fuel for mobility. There's also a 1/3 of a chance that they were born where there's no access to any energy at all. No electric power, no gasoline, no kerosene, no type of commercial energy at all.
There are big changes in the US right at this moment in energy supply, largely because we've discovered so much gas in tight formations, known as alternative gas or shale gas.
Right.
It's changing everything, isn't it?
It's changing things very dramatically. And we went from where we were going to have shortages of natural gas not all that long ago to now the supply increased from a 30-year supply to a 60-year supply to a 100-year supply. Some would tell you maybe 200-year supply.
To get this gas, there's a process called fracking,
Yes.
which is a derivative of the word fracturing.
Yes.
And there's controversy about that. Explain that controversy.
Well, there's a couple different controversies. The key resolves around water. The process of where you inject large volumes of water with a little bit of chemical deep underground and fracture the rock to release the natural gas. That process requires a lot of water. So there's a question of the water being available. There's a question of how you treat the water. Now, the world-class companies do it correctly. The water, the extraction water that comes out of the well is properly treated and reused. And you have to do that properly. You can do it wrong. And if you do it wrong, you're going to have problems.
The U.S. Energy Association has a global role as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Probably 80% of what we do is international in nature.
And what is that? You don't provide energy. What is your international role?
Mostly it's working with developing countries and trying to transfer best practices, both management practices and technology. The United States leads the world still in many, many technologies, but we also lead the world in terms of how you operate energy corporations, how you organize regulatory functions, many different things like this. We have a lot of examples, both good and bad, to illustrate to other countries so they can observe how we conduct different things.
Give me 2 examples.
Well, a great example today that's very current is using enhanced oil recovery combined with carbon capture and storage. Carbon capture and storage is a technology that's very expensive still. It's got to be demonstrated on large scale. And we have been taking carbon dioxide for about 3 decades, injecting it underground for enhanced oil recovery, which means oil fields that are kind of depleted, worn out, we can inject carbon dioxide into them and increase the flow of oil. No other country in the world has the experience that the United States has in that particular
So you twin
process.
up with somebody, say, in Nigeria or Sudan or wherever.
Exactly.
And show them how to do this.
We show them how we do it. And we take the approach that you guys are smart. We'll show you our practices. We'll show you how we manage different functions. And you can take the experiences that you observe from us and apply them to your circumstances, which are going to be different. And take what works for you and take advantage of our experience.
You said examples, good and bad. Are you going to give us a bad example that we...
I'll give you a great bad example. When we were working in the late 90s on power market design all around the world, everybody was fascinated with California. And we would insist that, yes, we'll show you the California model, but we'll show you the other models that we have in the United States as well. And as time went on, that approach of showing different models borne out when you remember very well the California energy crisis.
Do you think that we're going to see electric vehicles in your lifetime or your son's lifetime?
Oh, I think we will. I think
as a serious contribution, not as a few people doing the morally high ground thing.
Well, you know, we're getting there now kind of at a niche basis. There's a couple different issues, though, that we have to be realistic about. First, we built up this gasoline supply infrastructure over 100 years. It's there, it's in place, it's relatively inexpensive, it's highly convenient. Electric vehicles are going to have to meet both the cost and the convenience of your traditional gasoline-powered engines.
Is Detroit talking, or is it sitting down with electric utilities saying, we are going to need X amount of electricity in the middle of the night to recharge Y number of cars?
You know, the auto industry never talked to the petroleum industry or the electric industry on a regular basis until the GA Energy Ministers meeting was in Detroit in 2002. And that brought the oil companies and the electric companies to Detroit. And that was the first conversation I'm aware of where they actually all sat down around the same table and were talking about what the future was going to look like. And now you do have the auto companies going to the electric power meetings, you have the auto companies going to the petroleum meetings, you have the petroleum industry going to the electric power meetings.
That's a sea change.
It is enormous.
The governor of Texas, the state where we're making this recording, says that the United States can be self-sufficient in energy. No one I have spoken to in the energy business believes that. Do you believe it?
Today, for the first time, you're actually seeing that happen, where imports are dropping and domestic production is increasing. Whether we can be independent is a very sharp question, and it's certainly not going to happen anytime soon. But what we definitely can do better than what we're doing now is increase domestic production.
And a lot of this goes to these new technologies of extracting oil from tight formations, right?
Absolutely.
North
And
Dakota is now an oil-producing state, a boom state with unemployment at 3.5%.
it's quite incredible.
If you can find housing and you've got a lot of warm clothes, get up there, there are jobs.
Well, there certainly are jobs, and that's one great example. There's other examples of onshore production, there's examples of offshore production. And let me say also, when we talk about increasing domestic production, we don't mean just the 50 United States, we mean North America. And we have a great opportunity to increase our imports to the United States from Canada. And we'll see over some decisions that are going to take place here in the next few months whether our nation will actually be serious about reducing dependence on oil from unfriendly countries.
Barry
It is.
Worthington, thank you
Thank you, sir.
very much.
Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure.
Great to be with you.
Wonderful. Karl Rose is a man who peers into the future. He's done that for some years when he was an executive at Royal Dutch Shell and now with the World Energy Council based in London. Welcome to the broadcast, Karl.
Thank you.
Now we are 7 billion people on the earth. It seems to me that in order to sustain that many people and more coming, we need three things, and they're related: energy, water, and food. What do you see looking into the future?
Well, actually, you're quite right. We have something in the energy field which we call the water energy nexus, which means that the increasing use of water to generate energy. I think we now are realizing that we most probably have to add another word, which is food. So we are now talking, if we look into the future, the water, energy, and food nexus.
Now, let's explain for our viewers and listeners water and energy. That is for cooling power plants, for hydroelectric, for fracking. Is that what you mean? Is it that
Yes.
set of water uses as opposed to the normal human
exactly.
need for drinking water and agricultural water, etc.?
And quite a number of the new energy resources, talking about biofuels, but also talking about unconventional gas, have a higher water footprint than some of the conventional energy sources, like refining of crude oil. So what we see is that the water needs are going up at a time when water stresses are appearing anyway because of the demand of water for human and for agricultural use.
What do we do about energy in those most deprived areas, such as the Middle East?
I think the first thing we need to do is to create awareness that we're actually not only dealing with the need to supply access to energy to some of the poorest parts of the world, but hand in hand with that, we need to take care of a proper usage of the water, which is coincidentally in most of those areas also in very short supply. So that we look at it, take a systemic view of the whole water energy system and not only focus on energy at the expense of water.
We're talking here about fresh water. We're not actually talking
Yes.
about salt water, are we?
Yes.
But for some of the energy uses, isn't salt water available and appropriate?
Well, if you use water in an industrial content as processing water, very often you're dealing with very tight quality constraints. We talk actually in the energy industry very often about designer water. Unfortunately, you need to take very often salt water out. Now, there are water injection projects where you actually deal with salt water, very often offshore. This is what we do. But increasingly, we are actually trying to have as pure water as we can in order to actually optimize the sweep efficiencies downhole and to get actually more oil and gas out of the ground.
If we move from oil and gas, which was primarily what you were just talking about, we move to electricity. In the United States, there's been an effort to get rid of once-through cooling, where in estuaries and rivers the water is used to cool the plant, but it comes out warmer. The ambient temperature is higher going out than it was going in, as you might predict. To replace this with cooling towers, but cooling towers use up a lot of water. It evaporates, do they not? Is this a sensible use of water? Is this doing something which seems good but actually has a higher environmental price down the road?
Well, the latest developments actually go into the direction of replacing water cooling with air cooling. Now, here we're talking about more expensive systems. So, in the Middle East, for example, we already see the first plants going into place which have so-called zero water footprints. So there you put new technologies in place where you either have a closed circle of water usage, so you're not wasting any water, or you're actually replacing it with air cooling.
Which energy source do you feel is the kindest to water, just to water, in its environmental impact?
I would have to say most probably, but it is actually wind power, and surprise, surprise, it might actually be conventional oil production, which has an oil to water ratio of only 1:1.
We better explain to people that the water is used to push down the hole to get it. It's called fracking from fracturing, and that's where the water comes in.
No, I was actually talking about the water which is being used in a refinery within the process.
Within the process. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
So you do need some water to actually process the crude oil into gasoline and into diesel, and that is actually a ratio of 1:1. What you're talking about, the fracking, is very often used now in the unconventional gas field or in the unconventional oil field when we need to help nature, the forces of nature, to actually extract the hydrocarbons out of the ground. There is a heavy debate about the use of large quantities of waters in these fracturing processes, but also there I think technology is progressing very rapidly. And for example, the amount of chemicals going into this type of water are being significantly reduced as we speak, and there are now processes in place where you use fresh water which can be recovered and reused again.
Utterly fascinating, and very good luck with your work. It's a
Thank you
pleasure
very much.
talking to you. We pause for station identification. The audio from this program can be heard on Sirius XM Radio, channel 124, the POTUS channel. We are broadcast every Saturday